All right, folks, let's get into this one. There is a lot of stuff going on right now. I wanted to wait until I had confirmed information in front of me, which is why I chose to not broadcast until 2:30 in the morning. Now, you're not going to hear the typical loud James because I am broadcasting from my phone in my office, in my house, and I can't wake anybody up. But folks, there is so much going on, and I thought that I would talk about it now because it's important that you get the information. Now, we are going to provide a lot of analysis for you in the upcoming week, probably within the next upcoming several weeks. But what you hear right now is really, really important, okay? First and foremost, we know this. We know that Ibrahim Raisi is dead, the president of Iran. We also know that Hussein Amir-Abdollahian is also dead. Now, this is really important because Ibrahim Raisi and Amir-Abdollahian is two of the most powerful people in Iran. As a matter of fact, the only person more powerful than these two are going to be Khomeini himself. Now, this is really critical that we understand this. Now, what happened? It was a helicopter crash. There were 3 helicopters that were coming back from the Azerbaijan region. Sorry if I mispronounce a bunch of stuff. It's late. I've been up for almost 24 hours. It's been a crazy time coming on the heels of a Sunday night. But they're coming back from this Azerbaijani region that is in Iran, very mountainous type of a region. There were 3 helicopters that were involved in this. 2 of those helicopters got to their destination safely. The 3rd helicopter that had Raisi and Amir-Abdollahian were all in there. That crashed, okay? Now, this is really important because you have to understand what this would be sort of the equivalent to in the United States of America. It would be the equivalent to the vice president and potentially like the secretary of state or the speaker of the house being in the same helicopter and dying. And of course, what you have to understand is Khomeini himself doesn't do any of the interacting, politically speaking, with other world leaders or anything like that. He is, in essence, the grand ruler. He's the one who actually rules in Iran. He's the big decision maker. But you have to understand that Raisi, who's the president, is the one that's going to the UN. He's the one that's talking to people, other world leaders, and so on and so forth. And you have to also understand that Hussein Amir-Abdollahian is a very, very, very evil and deadly man. By the way, both of them are. Ibrahim Raisi is known as the butcher of Tehran, right? And Amir-Abdollahian is also a very, very evil man. He is one of the foremost dominant leaders in the IRGC. He might be the foreign minister, but he is one of the dominant leaders. And by the way, I have to point this out because this is really important. I did a video on this, and I hope you guys will see this online because we did do a lot of addressing with this issue that we want you guys to be aware of in terms of what's happening and what's taking place. And the name of the video, and I'm going to find it because I think it's really important that you go watch it if you have not watched it. I did a couple of videos, actually. One of them I'm going to link to the end of this one that I think is really, really important. Actually, I'm going to put both links to this in the description. But one is, in essence, the president of Iran who is speaking to the United Nations. And I have a video of him talking. I did a lot of analysis on that and explained why so much of what he's actually doing and saying is just completely radically demonic and dark, pretty evil thing. And then the other video that I did is called, and it's a recent one, "The UN Just Tried to Destroy Israel." And in this video, I actually spent time actually showing you the speech that the UN ambassador from Israel gave, where he actually talked about how evil Abdollahian is and some of the things that are actually going on with his terrorist participation in the IRGC. That's a very, very important thing. And then I did another video, again, that I think is super critical, that deals with Iran, and one that's very, very important. And that is called "Iran's President Has Made a Clear Warning to Israel." Iran's president has made a clear warning to Israel. You'll be able to see the president of Iran directly speaking to the UN, and it gives you a really good idea in terms of what he's about and how absolutely evil and demonic he is. I guarantee you, folks, these are people that are very likely not in a good place right now. As a matter of fact, I hate to say this. I don't want to be the type of person that says something like this, but they're definitely burning in hell. They're evil people. The butcher of Tehran, Ibrahim Raisi, is responsible for the death of probably north of 100,000 Iranians. By the way, it's interesting. With this president dying and with one of the most influential leaders in the IRGC dying, right, the foreign minister, you know who are lighting firecrackers and fireworks and celebrating right now? Many Iranians. You're not seeing Jews doing it so publicly in Israel right now. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of silence happening right now. And there's a lot of reason for that because the geopolitical implications of what just happened are really, really significant. Now, why is this such a huge loss and a destabilizing loss for Iran? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. Okay, first of all, Khomeini is getting older, and he is not far from passing away. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people that believe that he is struggling with some type of cancer, and you have to understand Ibrahim Raisi is very, very close to Khomeini. As a matter of fact, they literally are mirrors of one another, and it has been generally understood that Khomeini was looking to Raisi to actually be the one who would take his place. Remember, Ibrahim Raisi is a very religious man, and when I say religious, I don't mean correctly religious. He's demonically religious. He is a fundamentalist in Islam, specifically in the Shiite Islamic beliefs, and that's a really weird belief, by the way. Matter of fact, part of that belief involves the idea that Jesus is going to come back with one of their leaders and destroy all the Jews and all the Christians. It's really crazy. But they believe this, and it's something that they talk about quite a bit. And quite frankly, it's just very, very evil stuff. But let's talk about the geopolitical implications here. If Raisi is no longer the person who can take control for Khomeini, Khomeini is going to be in a very desperate situation because he needs to find somebody that has his type of idealism that will carry on what he seeks to carry on with the kind of strength that he's been leading with. It's not very likely he's going to find anybody quite like that because all those people have pretty much died. I will tell you this. Not a good idea to go against Israel and come against God and in essence think that God isn't going to judge you for this. Now, I want to say this. They were in a very old helicopter. I don't remember what helicopter they said it was. It was like a Bell 222, something like that. Those were parts that could only be gotten in the United States of America. And if they got it from anywhere else, it would have been a black market type thing. So the parts on those helicopters probably were in terrible shape. I would guarantee you the fact that those helicopters were not properly maintained, so it's kind of stupid of them to fly in that weather. My understanding is when the helicopters took off, the weather was clear, but remember, even with an instrument rating, flying in a helicopter in that region is just absolutely crazy, right? Maybe they did it for security reasons. I don't understand why they did what they did, but it was sort of a game of Russian roulette getting in a helicopter like that. With that said, some things are happening right now that we have to be paying attention to. First of all, Khomeini just announced a few hours ago that Iran's first vice president, Mohammad Mokhber, would be taking over as the acting president until elections are held in 50 days or so. Now, what's really interesting about Mohammad Mokhber is he's not going to be nearly as hardline as Raisi is. Some people say he might be more. Some people say he might be less. We just don't know. We're not going to understand until we actually see what kind of a leader he becomes and what takes place. I think that if he wants to do what's politically expedient for him, at least within the regime of Khomeini, he might end up doing exactly what we've seen Raisi do. I'm not sure. We don't know what's going to happen with that. But let me tell you where the real geopolitical implications are, what the real geopolitical implications are of what's happening right now. First of all, Iran is technically in the weakest state that it has ever been, at least within recent years. You've got a lot of complications that right now sit with the JCPOA. And for those of you that don't know about this joint comprehensive agreement, it isn't worth the piece of paper that it's actually written on. But the JCPOA has made a way for the, for lack of a better term, for the sunset clause to actually be recreated in a way that causes them to be able to play around with nuclear weapons. We know that under the rule of Raisi, he's enriched uranium a lot, well, I think very much weapons-grade uranium. He's done that, further escalating all kinds of problems with not only Israel, but of course the West. And he's actually enriched uranium at a level that no other leader before him has. And as a matter of fact, there is a story that I'm going to be releasing on Friday where I actually talk about the enrichment of this uranium and how a recent lawmaker in Iran, actually spoke up about the enrichment of this uranium. And I think it's really interesting. It's a video that I'm releasing on Friday that I think is entitled 3 News Stories You Should Be Following. But more on that to come. What is interesting here and what is really important is to understand what can actually happen, okay? We don't know what kind of pressure is going to now be on Hezbollah to the north. We don't know what kind of support is going to end up going to Iran's proxies. This is going to have an effect on 3 major terrorist groups that we should probably think about immediately, right? We have to start looking at Hezbollah. We need to find out how much they're going to be changing. Remember, there are attacks that have been escalating dramatically from southern Lebanon, which would be the north, Israel to the north. We don't know what's going to happen with this. Nasrallah has been proving himself to be a very weak leader. And in his weakness, I think there's a lot of fear that he's going to end up getting killed. So I think that he's going to back down when he recognizes that Iran is in a weakened state. Iran, my guess, is going to back down from the position that they're in right now with seeking to attack Israel because of the geopolitical mess that they've created for themselves by the absence of their foreign minister, who happens to be one of the most key guys in the IRGC, and of course, by the absence of the current president. A lot of the diplomatic delegations that have been ran out of Iran, if you want to call them diplomatic delegations, have been ran by the foreign minister and have been ran, of course, by Raisi himself, specifically with the relationship that they have with the UN. This is also really interesting in that the UN was immediate, I mean very quick, to offer their condolences concerning Raisi's death and concerning the foreign minister's death, but that's because they're in bed with Iran and they themselves are terrorists. I think the United Nations is a terrorist organization and probably something that we should talk about at another point, because things are getting really ugly with the UN and it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. But the other thing that's happening here that's really interesting that we have to just stop for a moment and think through is you also are going to face a problem with the southern Arabian Peninsula, right? So when you talk about the southern portion of the Arabian Peninsula, which would be Yemen, okay? Yemen is going to find themselves in a bit of teeter-tottering or instability, because now their greatest sponsor of terror is going to be putting some of their activity on hold. So the Yemeni Houthis, we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know how this is going to affect the Red Sea. We don't know how this is going to affect Russia. There's a lot of questions as into what's going to take place with Russia. And perhaps one of the more significant variables right now that a lot of people aren't thinking about or looking through, because they wouldn't. There's no way to think about it. You can't predict the death of the president. But my guess is it's going to dramatically affect the position of Hamas. And I think that it's going to very much weaken the position of Hamas. And I think it will open up a very short window, albeit, for Israel to act very dramatically and effectively in eliminating Hamas in Rafah and potentially in Khan Yunis if one of the leaders of Hamas is actually there, as they say. There's also a lot of questioning with Hamas right now in terms of the tunnels, and they're finding out now that many of these tunnels that were in the southern portion of Gaza, specifically in this area of Rafah, have actually led into Egypt, but that's nothing that we don't know. We've been talking about the fact that that's the possibility. But again, Egypt is taking a very hardline stance in what they're allowing the people that are in the south to do. Specifically, they're concerned about not wanting to see any Palestinian in their country. And there's a big reason for that, because why would they want a Palestinian in the Rafah portion of Egypt? And why would they want Palestinians anywhere near the Sinai, anywhere near the Red Sea, anywhere near Sharm el-Sheikh, anywhere near the Suez Canal? Remember, al-Sisi just kicked out a bunch of Islamic Brotherhood, and Islamic Brotherhood were the people that actually created Hamas. So there's a lot going on here that we really have to just think through. I'll tell you what I'm going to be doing. I am going to be monitoring all of this very closely. We have already recorded an episode of Countdown to Eternity where we talk about the geopolitics of this as it relates to the Bible and what could actually happen. I did that with Tom. That's getting released on Wednesday. On Tuesday, I pre-recorded a great live show with David Tall, and we speculated quite a bit on what we could end up seeing as a result of what happened with the death of the Iranian president. And that's before we even know that he had died, but we assumed that we would have a better understanding of what had happened by the time we released that video, and we assumed correctly. And then I'm going to spend a lot of time on Thursday, my Thursday live show, providing a bunch of Mideast analysis. As a matter of fact, my live show on Thursday, I will probably dedicate a solid 2 hours to sitting down and talking about what's going on in the Mideast, because by that time, I'm going to have a whole lot more information. And when I do, I will live go through everything that's going on. We'll get into all of the stories and we'll talk about it. What the Associated Press right now is saying about the things that we're seeing is pretty significant. There's a lot of information about what they are actually confirming. Remember, this stuff is very, 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 very significant, okay? Let me repeat myself, okay? When you start talking about the rankings and when you start talking about who is who in Iran, okay, the Ayatollah Khomeini is number one in power. Number two is Raisi. Raisi is dead. Number three, of course, is Amir-Abdollahian. He's dead, okay? By the way, Raisi, I think, is at this point, I think he's like 62, 63 years old. Abdollahian is either 59 or 60. I haven't checked the age here. But what's really interesting here is that so much here is going to change, because remember, the two most powerful people, like number two ranked and number three in Iran, are now dead. You have lots of commanders from the IRGC that are dead. You have leeways to Hezbollah that are dead. It's absolutely crazy. And by the way, there are people that are already beginning to blame the United States of America and Israel for this. Let me read to you some quotes, okay? This is really interesting, right? Let me read you a portion from the Associated Press. It says this. It says, among the dead was Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, which we talked about, right? Oh, they do confirm that he's age 60. They say the helicopter also carried the governor of Iran's East Azerbaijan province, which, by the way, we will spend some time talking about that, because that is also very significant. In terms of the lineup of power, he's not all that powerful, but he is uniquely influential with respect to the relationship that the Iranians have with Azerbaijan. Of course, Azerbaijan, you need to understand, they are a Shiite nation that has actually a very complicated relationship with Israel, but one that is very amicable. There's a lot of complexities associated with that. They recently actually set up a an embassy in Tel Aviv, I believe, which created a lot of ripples, especially with Iran. But Azerbaijan has a very close relationship with Iran, and what Azerbaijan is doing right now to Christians in Armenia and what's happening with Armenians in Azerbaijan is a whole other ball of wax, but it is very interesting, right? But look at what it goes on to say. It says, the other officials of the state-run IRNA news, this was reported by the IRNA, and then it says the IRNA said the crash killed 8 people in all, including 3 crew members on the Bell helicopter, which Iran purchased in the early 2000s. By the way, it's an old Bell helicopter. What's Iran doing with an older Bell helicopter? But look what it says. In the next paragraph, it says aircraft in Iran face a shortage of parts, often flying without safety checks over Western sanctions because of that. Former Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif sought to blame the United States for the crash in an interview Monday. Isn't that crazy? Zarif is already blaming the United States of America. Look at his quotes. He says, one of the main culprits of yesterday's tragedy is the United States, which embargoed the sale of aircraft and aviation parts to Iran and does not allow the people of Iran to enjoy good aviation facilities. Okay, he goes on to say these will be recorded in the list of U.S. crimes against the Iranian people. All right, well, quite frankly, it's the Iranian people that brought that, well, not the Iranian people, it's the leaders of Iran that brought that upon themselves. They're the ones that created the conditions that have allowed these embargoes and these sanctions, and they could have walked away from it. Listen, they could have been, they could have participated in the negotiating table. The Biden administration has given them more than we can possibly imagine. But that's what's going to happen. The next step here is that Iran is going to blame Israel. Iran is going to blame the United States of America, and they are going to take advantage of this opportunity to create some type of full-scale war. I think that's what's going to happen, and I think we need to wake up to seeing that that's what's going to happen, and that's what's in front of us right now. So there you go. That's what's happening. I would totally encourage you guys to stay close to the YouTube channel. I would definitely subscribe if you're watching this. Also, if you're watching this on Rumble, we'll be making things available all throughout. I will be doing a massive a massive amount of updates on all of this. By the time we have all the facts gathered on Thursday for my live show, I'm going to do a ton of geopolitical analysis. So you guys will be able to get a really good picture of what to expect, what we're going to see happening, what's going to actually form, and any speculation you might have, we'll actually deal with pretty effectively and pretty quickly. Okay? So there you have it. I've got all the info on it. Hopefully you've got a good foundation for what's taking place. Again, Ibrahim Raisi, the president of Iran, is confirmed dead. Even Iran is saying that's the case. And of course, we know the foreign minister, Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, he's a terrorist. He is the highest ranking member of the IRGC right now, the most influential member. And he just spoke at the United Nations Security Council less than a week after they launched the largest full-scale attack in the history of the Middle East in recent days or in modern years against Israel, and they got away with it. That's the thing I can't believe it. But let me say this, they didn't get away with it because look what God allowed to happen today. Look what took place. They didn't get away with anything. And I will say this as kind of a closing thought. When it comes to God's chosen people, Israel, mess around and find out. Go ahead, Iran. Mess around and find out. I'm sorry. And just wait until you start seeing what happens with Hamas. Wait until we start seeing what happens with Hezbollah. Wait until we start seeing what happens with the Yemeni Houthis. Wait until we start seeing what happens in Iraq. Iraq is going to change significantly as a result of this, especially as a result of the recent meeting that Iraq had with the leader of Turkey, and how that's going to dramatically affect what Kuwait does with Iran. As a matter of fact, Kuwait might back out of what they're thinking about with respect to Iran, especially as it relates to creating a pathway for what goes into what will be the new Babylon. There's a lot there. We'll talk about all of it. All right. So love you guys. God bless you. Keep fighting the good fight. Lots of info here. Hopefully that's been helpful. And again, I would definitely appreciate you guys checking back. We will provide you the best possible information we can give you all the geopolitical analysis. We love you guys. God bless you. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm signing out. Love you guys. God bless you.